I'm Paloma. Thank you so much for joining us. I am from Team Ritual. I'd love to get started by having you introduce yourselves. Heather, would you like to get started?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I am Heather Turgeon. I'm a psychotherapist in Los Angeles, and I'm the co-author of 2 parenting books, The Happy Sleeper and Now Say This, with my partner Julie, who's in New York City. So we run a sleep consulting business. We work with families that have baby to school age kids, and our main specialty is helping them sleep.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jill Campbell. I am the staff psychologist and parent and me curriculum director for the Pump Station and Nursery. And we are a new parent resource center and boutique located in Santa Monica and Hollywood.
I'm Dr. Jacqueline Winkelmann. I'm a pediatrician, hospital-based at Chuck Children's and former chief of staff at Chuck Children's in Mission Viejo in Southern California. And I'm also the chief medical officer for Miku Care. I'm so happy to be here.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for joining us. So today we will be talking all about sleep. It's a very important topic all around. So you all have a different take on it. So we're really excited to learn more from you. Can you please tell us about what your unique approach to sleep is? Dr. Jill, would you like to get started?
Sure. I don't know how unique my approach is, but I think the perspective I'm coming from is I'm working with new moms in our Parent and Me program. So I really look at whole health of the entire family. And I also look at developmentally, which I'm sure the other panelists do as well, like where the baby's at and what's going on. And so putting a program together for a parent based on what their needs are and what they're going through.
Amazing. That's so great. Heather, Kat loves Happy Sleeper, and you actually helped sleep train her child, right?
Yes, I did. I remember her well. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that was like?
Yes. So we have a book called The Happy Sleeper. We started working with families around sleep because we were seeing a dilemma that parents have around sleep being natural and attachment being natural, and parents feeling like they have to choose between having a full night's sleep and having a secure, healthy attachment with their child, an emotionally responsive attachment. So our approach is to give people the best of both worlds, to have a middle ground of having a full night's sleep, because kids are built to sleep. Babies actually want to sleep.
We all want to sleep, right?
We all do. It's amazing. They seem like they don't at first, but sleep is natural. So we essentially are just helping parents unfold natural sleep, which is means sleeping through the night. Babies are actually kind of built to sleep for 11 to 12 hours after a certain age. So our approach is to find what we call the win-win: secure attachment and sleeping through the night.
That's amazing. Dr. Jack, what is sleep like in the hospital for new babies?
For new babies and for every patient, sleep is a challenge. They're in a very specific, unusual setting with a lot of monitoring and a lot of sort of built-in interruptions during the night. So it's not normal sleep by any means. But what I do like to tell parents is that they need to find what works for them. And I think there's so many different methods out there to, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about sleep training per se, but I feel like the important thing is that not only you are in partnership with your partner, you need to be, on the same page, and, consistency, and then choosing a method that will work.
I think so many times we're so caught up in like doing it right and doing it wrong.
Right.
And, we get a lot of questions that are so specific, like exactly how many minutes can I let them cry? Exactly how many this, exactly how many that. And it's really about, the babies are a lot more resilient than we give them credit for. And it's about making the parents feel more confident, I think. And so I couldn't agree more with Jacqueline.
Yeah.
it's hard listening to your child knowing that they're struggling through it. But like you said, sometimes it's harder on the parent than it actually is on the child.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, really the different methods are more for the parents than for the baby, right? The baby will come out of it learning how to sleep, and the parents need to be able to kind of tolerate that process and be okay with it and feel confident about it.
Right. So what tips or suggestions do you have as far as like a partnership, and how can a partner support the mother as she's breastfeeding during the night?
Take turns, ask her what she needs. I mean, I think it's really important that parents talk about the plan. I mean, it depends on the age of the baby, because if we're talking about a new baby, a 0 to 4 month baby, it's really natural and normal and important for them to feed at night. So that's a time where we're looking at, okay, how can we support a breastfeeding mom? Or if they're not breastfeeding, how can we take turns? What's our plan for being responsive? Because babies need to feel the parents' presence during the night. They don't stop being babies because it's the nighttime. So they need to feel like they have their important people. But those two people, or one person or whoever it is, need to also be on the same page. And it's important and helpful to talk about that before the night comes, because nighttime for a new parent is like, you feel the sun going down, and you feel that kind of dread. So before that dread sets in, talk about like, what is our game plan? Where is our baby in their developmental path? Are we feeding at night? Are we feeding on demand? Or is this a moment where now we're moving into a new chapter of, we know this baby's capable of independent sleep. Okay, now what's our game plan before the dread sets in, before the night sets in, and exactly what are we doing depending on what time it is and all of that. So talking about it during daylight hours, I think, is important.
I agree. I think for me personally, the way my husband and I did it is that I would nurse during the night, but as soon as I was done nursing, he was taking the baby, burping, changing diaper, doing the rest of it. And at least I felt like I could literally just stay in my bed, open my eyes, close my eyes, and, go back to sleep as soon as possible, with him taking kind of the rest of that responsibility. And I also think that being less stressed and well rested during the day helps a ton when you're just trying to get through that night. When your day is really bad, the nights seem eternal and painful. So, getting as much help as you can during the day, not just from your partner, but from your entire village, the parents, the in-laws, the best friends, and alleviating some of that responsibility and stress and tiredness, I think helps you kind of get through the night, especially early on when even if you're breastfeeding, you're kind of the sole person to be doing that job.
Right.
Yeah. And I could just add, at the beginning, we know that if an adult could get like a 4-hour block of sleep, they're going to feel a lot more well rested than if they're woken up every 2 to 3 hours. So at the very beginning, when a baby absolutely might need to eat every 3 hours, that if you designate 2 4-hour shifts, and then if it's the mom's 4-hour shift to sleep, then that would be the dad or the partner getting the baby up, changing their diaper, bringing to mommy, as Jacqueline said, mommy does the feed. Yes, she's not 100% asleep, but at least she doesn't have to move around too much. Mm-hmm. And then the second 4-hour shift, then the daddy or the other partner can rest. So sometimes breaking it up like that. And then as baby gets older, one of the things I suggest is, as baby's still in the same room but older, is maybe move the baby to the other parents, the parent who's not nursing, to the other parent's side of the bed, because sometimes babies just are noisy. It depends what stage of sleep they're in. And when babies make a little like moms like that are nursing are usually right up, but then they maybe have a letdown. So by being on the other parent's side of the bed, sometimes it buys you a little pause, and that's really all you need for the baby to kind of naturally go back to sleep. So that's another way that the other parent can help.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. So at what point do you feel, if at all, that it's appropriate to transition your child out of your room and into their own room?
Well, I can tell you and I actually have a slightly different feeling about this just because of my personal opinion and something that Jill just mentioned. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that your baby sleeps in a different surface, but in your room for, ideally 6 months, and then move out. Now, the reality of it is, again, it needs to work for you. And if that doesn't work for you, there's plenty of safe spaces for the baby to sleep farther away from your bed. And I was, like Jill mentioned, not even on the other side of the bed. I mean, every single little noise would completely wake me up. And I think probably because for so many years of medical training, I was sleeping with a beeper on me. And, every little buzz and every little thing just completely wakes you up. So for me, it just didn't work. She was in a safe space in her crib, in her room. We had a baby monitor, and I could see her and I could hear her, and that is what. And I preferred to actually be able to sleep between feedings. And again, my husband would help. He would go get her and bring her to me and help me that way. But I think that most experts recommend that if it works for you, ideally the baby would sleep in a different surface in your room for up to 6 months.
I think it's really important to look at the overall. I mean, that recommendation to share a room is based on what's the safest, and the research is a little bit fuzzy on exactly what factors are coming into play that would lead a baby to have a decreased risk if they're in the same room. There's a bit of a mystery quality there, but the most important thing is that they're following the safe sleeping recommendations that are, those are very clearly proven to reduce the risk, like sleeping on their own surface and, having the air temperature be slightly cooler, having some moving air, breastfeeding and not smoking, all the things that we know are by the research do lower the risk. So I think it's sort of at that point, because when you're looking at the overall health of the family, and if the parents aren't sleeping and they're so sleep deprived that they're not, that the quality of their time together during the day is not, it's like you have to look at a more nuanced picture of what's going on with the overall health of the family, because in so many cases, it actually really does improve the quality of life and the health and all the other outcomes by moving into another room. If they're sharing a room, like we work with a lot of families in New York City, and because Julie's there and space is an issue, and there isn't another way to do it. And so we have parents a lot of times, like Jill was mentioning, either move the crib to the other side of the room or even just come up with a way of separating the space even more physically, so that the baby, especially as they get older, they're not like pulling up to a stand and like, hey, it's the middle of the night, but I can see you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of creative ways to solve that dilemma.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, Heather? What are your recommendations for setting up a room for ideal sleep?
I have been so impressed with so many of the families that we work with that have come up with creative ways to separate the space in the same room, partly because of the AAP recommendation, and partly just because they want to have, the baby in the room. They just feel better that way. And as the baby gets older, the ability that they have to look at you is quite, to look at you and talk to you is it's confusing for them and very activating. So we've had parents, do changing screens. We've had them put certain pieces of furniture in between. I've even had a lot of parents do like a track of, IKEA makes those tracks of curtains that you can get for the ceiling. And you think it's not a big deal because the baby obviously knows that you're there. They know, they can hear you, but just the visual distinction of having their own, it's like they have their own little sleeping cave within your room. And really, like, a cave is like the ideal sleeping environment. Super dark, cool, boring. Like that's the ideal sleeping environment, is just, as cool and dark and, with some moving air, with some white noise is great.
I could just add to that, because I am a stepmom and my amazing stepdaughter lives in Brooklyn in a 1-bedroom apartment, and her son, or my grandson, is 2, and they are still in the same room because there's just not another room to go to. And for a long time it worked out. And then he hit a developmental phase where he would wake up early and just be looking at them and wanting to play. And so I recommended just what Heather said. And initially it was a big cardboard box that they opened up just to make that divider, but it made all the difference. And she said it was like magic. So things like that, you know, as they develop and they become so much more social, they see mommy and daddy, they want to be with them, they want to play, even if they still need some more sleep. So a nice dark room environment can often help them to fall asleep and sleep longer in the morning too. And they're not afraid of the dark too, because I get asked that a lot. Like, aren't they afraid if the room's super dark? But babies are not afraid of the dark.
Interesting. Is there an age where they do become afraid of the dark?
I mean, possibly in the toddler years as the development changes and they start to have more of that imagination and their ability, and they start to have more dreams and the ability to have nightmares, then sometimes they want a little nightlight on or something, which is fine. But when it's really nice and dark and they're a baby, it's just less distracting.
So I would love to hear from any one of you what you think the best, most practical sleep schedule should be for a newborn as they transition into being a toddler. Like, how many naps should they be getting in a day? How many hours should they be sleeping at night?
It's a transition. So, you know, when babies are newborn, oftentimes they can't be awake for more than 60 minutes at the most without needing some type of nap. And their days, they're going to sleep a lot more during the day. So you're going to, at the very beginning, might not feel like there's much of a nap schedule and a nighttime schedule, because they're going to be sleeping maybe 6 to 8 hours during the day and then like another, 8 hours to 9 hours at night. So however that adds up, but you'll get these, little, between nursing and burping and all that, you have the very little bit of awake playtime before they need to go back down. And then as they grow, you're going to see that, like if you look at it sort of, it's going to start shifting. So we see usually by 4 months, babies are on more of a 3 nap a day pattern. So it could be 4 even, but their wake windows start to grow to maybe 90 minutes to even 2 hours. And then as they continue to grow, those awake windows get a little bit bigger. So usually sometime between 6 and 9 months, they drop from 3 naps to 2. So typically by 9 months, they're on 2 naps a day. So now we're at a very different place where they have about 3.5 hours, maybe 4 hours at the most of daytime sleep, and they're sleeping like 10 to 12 hours at night. So once they get to their first birthday, they're usually on still 2 naps a day, and then sometime between 12 months and 18 months, they'll drop to 1 nap a day. So it just keeps kind of changing with the awake windows getting larger and larger, them being able to sleep longer stretches at night and needing slightly less daytime sleep.
No, I think that's great. And the problem with, I think sometimes parents want that, okay, so from 9 to 10:30 they should be doing this, and from 11 to, and the best thing is, like Jill said, it's sort of a spectrum that evolves. And I think what you want to pay attention to, even from very early on, is those cues that your child is getting tired, because they'll sort of have similar cues, but the timing will change. And just like with adults, some function great with 5 hours of sleep and some need a full 8 or 9. Babies will also, they're individuals. And even between one child and another, I had very different sleep schedules for my 2 children, just because they had different personalities. But learning those little cues that, okay, rubbing of the eyes and, whatever it's telling you that I'm getting tired and, losing energy as they get older when they're playing, or not interested in playing or the book that you're reading. Just paying attention to those cues and getting to know your baby to childhood, I think, is what will get you to have the best sleep schedule for your child.
We have parents focus on the awake span. So parents, like you guys have both mentioned, get very focused on how much their baby's sleeping. Like they clock it and they track it, and probably the app thing too. Like there's so many apps that track everything. So they get very focused on the numbers, which is super understandable. And we try to help people let go of that anxiety about calculating exactly how much the baby's getting at the beginning and focusing more on how long they've been awake, because they can only be awake for a certain amount of time. Like Bill mentioned before, their sleep drive really builds up and they need to nap. And if you can control how often you put them down, but you can't control how long they sleep at the beginning, especially. You can't make a person sleep. You can only set the stage and have the right routine and the right, environment and the opportunity for them to sleep, but you have to leave it in their court how long they actually sleep. And some babies we typically hear from parents a lot around 4 months when babies are only napping for 30 minutes at a time. And the parents are like, oh my God, this is insane. How are they I do all this work to get them to sleep and then they only sleep for 30 minutes. So there is a lot of focus on the numbers. We do know that by the age of about 5 months, babies can sleep for 11 to 12 hours at night. They may still feed. If you're still feeding at night, that's kind of separate. They can feed and go back to sleep because they want to be asleep at that point. So that benchmark of 11 or 12 hours of nighttime sleep, sometimes 10 and a half, is what we give parents as like taking the long view, like the light at the end of the tunnel. They really do want to sleep that much.
Yeah. I'm feeling like so grateful for this panel right now, because a lot of times you have people that really focus on, those exact numbers, and parents get that feeling like, oh no, if my baby's not falling into that, I'm doing something wrong. And what sleep and I think feeding are the two issues where new parents can just put all their anxiety on, and it becomes almost a little, like Heather was sort of pointing to, like obsessive. And they feel worthy or unworthy as a parent by how much their baby's sleeping and or eating. And so to really be able to listen to this, hopefully today, and give themselves some grace and know that their baby will be okay. And certainly understanding, look at awake windows and look at sleepy cues and be aware of sort of what we know about development, but at the same time, allow your baby to be and trust that you're doing a great job and your baby will be okay, is such a big part of this journey.
Well said.
So I've heard that you can set the foundation during the first 3 months, but that you don't have to worry about establishing any bad habits at that point.
Yeah, I think that comes from the fact that in the first few months, the brain is not really regulating, organizing sleep-wake cycles. So by the time a baby's more, in the 4, 5, 6 month of age, which is why when we talk about sleep training, that's the range that we focus on, is because the baby's brain is much more organized in the sleep-wake cycle and having the longer stretches of sleep at night. At the very beginning, it's all one continuous day, night, day, night, day, night. There's really no difference. The baby's brain does not know that now it is nighttime, I should be sleeping longer, kind of thing. So I think that's where you can't create bad habits. However, you can certainly start your good habits for a bedtime routine, even at a very early age. And again, trying to focus on setting up a ritual that lets the baby know, okay, this will lead to me going to bed, warm bath, reading a story, putting pajamas on, noise machine, dark room, cool. That's it. It sets the stage. So I think you can certainly start that as soon as you want to, when the baby comes home from the hospital. But understanding that your baby is not likely to sleep through the night at 2 months because their brain is just not quite ready for that.
Yeah, I would say, I think that's exactly right. That during the first, we're doing a few things in the first 4 months. One is building a secure attachment, and that means that responsiveness and following the baby's natural development, but sleep, sleep is about the internal clock, like you were saying, the brain developing, the internal clock developing that sense of night and day, the 24-hour clock, and developing the ability to self-soothe. And those things sort of happen gradually over the first, 4 to 6 months. So when we work with families in the first 0 to 4 months, we're looking at, so in our book or in our online classes, the tools are all about helping the parents follow the baby's natural ability, because those things don't just like happen one day. They wake up and they're 4 months old and they're able to sleep through the night. They come online gradually. So how can you gradually follow that development is what our tools for 0 to 4 month babies are. And then it looks very different for after that, because they are so capable after that point of sleeping well.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. For example, like if you get used to always feeding your baby to sleep, right? So at the very beginning, you're a new mom and maybe you're trying to establish breastfeeding. And so I don't want a brand new mom who's trying to establish breastfeeding to be worried about, oh wait, can't let the baby fall asleep on the boob. Like it's going to create way too much stress and anxiety. You're working toward, figuring this all out. But once you feel a little bit more comfortable and breastfeeding is a little bit more established and you're feeling like you've got the flow of it, like just starting to pay attention to maybe not always having baby fall asleep on the breast, even before that 4-month mark. And so if you can try other ways to have baby fall asleep sometimes with the flexibility that their ability to regulate their affect and arousal isn't very great right now. But if I just put steps toward that and try, then when I get to that age that we were talking about, that 4 to 6 month age, if my baby can also fall asleep, sometimes being put down awake, sometimes in the stroller, that it makes that next step so much easier than if a baby has gotten used to, oh, this is how we do it. I always fall asleep with the breast or bottle in my mouth. So I hope that makes it clear.
Yeah, definitely. Heather, can you share with us a little bit about how you get started with sleep training with new parents?
Okay, yeah. So, well, first of all, this term sleep training is in the Happy Sleeper book, and in our methods, we propose to not use the term because it's a little bit of a misnomer, because sleep is natural. Sleep is like breathing at a certain point. So when babies are capable of sleeping well, it is a natural ability that's hardwired into the brain. What we can do is work with the sleep associations that develop around sleep, because those are so powerful. So when we work with families to improve sleep, what we're doing is really looking at what we call helpful sleep associations and unhelpful sleep associations. And we're shifting them from, because most of the time parents get caught in a cycle of over helping after the point when the baby's actually capable of sleeping well independently. They're over helping. But the dilemma comes in because they don't know how to extract themselves in a kind way. And like I said, unravel all this work they've done to establish a secure attachment. So, a lot of families come to us with the dilemma of, well, somebody told me to shut the door and don't go in until morning. That doesn't feel right. I don't think I can do that. I don't know. Why should I have to do that? So we help parents basically extract their unhelpful sleep associations, which are typically, like Jill alluded to this, feeding all the way to sleep past the point when babies are capable of independent sleep. So we're talking about 5 months and older around. So moving from their unhelpful sleep associations, which really mask their natural ability to sleep, to their helpful sleep associations, which are things that they can do. So those things are, moving their bodies, making sounds, getting into their favorite position to sleep in, things that they can control, things that they make them feel confident, like they know what to do. So sleep training is really, when people say sleep training, it really means shifting from unhelpful sleep associations to helpful ones. So the way that we do that is to set up a system of response that lets the baby know we're there, but that does establish a new pattern. And it's pretty amazing how quickly they figure it out, because like I said, sleep is natural. They actually want to sleep.
And just to add to that, like when Heather says unhelpful sleep associations, that's always going to me, that's always also going to be in the eye of the parent. So if I'm a parent who says, you know what, I love having my baby take naps on me. Like I have tremendous joy in that. And my baby gets a really nice, good nap on me. Yes, the parent is the sleep association, but if it's working for the parent and the parent's happy and the baby's happy, I kind of go by the thought that if it's not broken, you don't have to fix it. But, sometimes or more often, we get to a stage where, the parent says, you know what, I really would like a little bit of me time when the baby's sleeping. And I really would love to be able to put the baby down to sleep, in the bassinet or the crib. And so then, as Heather was saying, helping them establish those sleep associations that are available in that area, help a baby get used to falling asleep in that area. But it's not, oh, this is for everyone. It's how it's working in your life and how well your baby's sleeping and how happy you are with the situation that you've created.
Agree. I couldn't agree more with you, Heather, about the concept and actually just even the words sleep training. I do not like them at all. And I think many parents only associate sleep training with what you just said. You shut the door and your baby cries eternally. And I think it's important for moms to know that there are many more gentler ways to do that while preserving your attachment and your relationship with your baby and finding a method that works, again, more the parent even than the baby. So I think we're kind of coming to an era where we're focusing more on the positive relationship between a parent and a child, and still being able to get through the milestones like getting your baby to put him or herself to sleep. It's important. It's an important skill for them to have, and it's an important skill for you to give them. And I think we all feel so proud when we get to that point. It's a very different point for all parents, and it does not mean that you're doing anything wrong or different. It's just where your baby is. So finding the method that works for you and your partner and your family, and all different situations, siblings sleeping in the room, all kinds of things, will affect how you do it. But just understanding that this is an important thing to do, because as we all know, proper sleep is key to overall health for everyone in the family. So you just certainly want to get to that point where you feel comfortable. But the word training and this like harshness associated with it is troublesome to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for clearing that up. It's such an important point to make too, because I do think that everyone has such a different bandwidth and a different level of support that it will look different for everyone. So yeah, thank you for that. My next question is for Dr. Jack. Can you tell us a little bit about why it's so important to invest in a good sleep monitor?
Yes, so there's actually quite a bit of controversy about sleep monitors at least in the pediatrician world. And I had many discussions with the Miku team prior to me joining as chief medical advisor. Monitoring your baby can honestly drive you nuts. As Heather said, Excel spreadsheets galore. Like parents just love looking at numbers and following data, and especially with a new child, a new parent will just thrive on just knowing every single detail of their lives. And yes, there are lots of data that we can collect nowadays with these awesome monitors out there that can track everything and anything. The reason I like this particular monitor is because I feel like not just the monitor, but the company really just wants to set a good environment for sleep. And that's what they're trying to achieve with everything they offer. It, measures room temperature, which is really important because most parents tend to overheat babies' rooms. And, we always have this feeling that the room needs to be warm. And I can tell you, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. And if you're Hispanic, it needs to be hot. So when I round on newborn babies and I open the door in the hospital, I know exactly who's going to be in it, because it's just culturally what we were told was proper. So it's important to understand that, you know, medically, scientifically, the brain doesn't work like that. The brain likes a room that's closer to 68 degrees than one that's 75 degrees. So so setting all those things, having a monitor that helps you, you know, humidity, temperature, white noise, you know, lullabies, all that kind of thing. Having a great video and audio, yes, can be very helpful, especially for moms like me that really could not have my baby in my room. It would be ideal to have a monitor that works that way. You know, that gives me a clear picture, clear sound, two-way communication. And yeah, honestly, even though I think a lot of pediatricians feel that it's just too much for a parent to handle, it's more things to worry about, I see it as just another tool to help you in this journey. And it's not an easy one with a newborn. Once you have more and more kids, it gets tougher and tougher. So all the help we can get, you know, more power to you. My kids are 14 and 19. I wish I would have been, you know, having babies in this day and age with all the extra, you know, help and gadgets. And, you know, from the Miku monitor in particular, and the ones that have more sophisticated tracking with vital signs and heart rate and respiratory rate, again, it's really about getting to know your child and getting to know what's normal for your child.
Jacqueline, I find that so many of the other monitors don't have good temperature gauges on them. So I think a good, like, accurate temperature gauge would be so helpful for parents, because, like you said, cooler temperature, there's usually like a debate between, if there's two parents, there's always like a room temperature debate, and one thinks it should be cooler, one is warmer. So when we do sleep consults, I'm always like, whichever one of you thinks it's supposed to be cooler, you're right. Then the other one's like, oh no, but cooler temperature. But they can never use those monitors for that purpose, because a lot of them don't have a good, so I love the idea of a really accurate temperature gauge that parents can really use.
Yes, and I mean, this particular monitor, which is the one I know the most about, I 100% trust the technology in it, because it is pretty unprecedented at this point.
That's great.
Heather, a question for you. If parents, as we mentioned before, are limited in space in their household and children of different age groups are forced to share a room, what advice do you have for setting up that sleeping environment?
When they're sharing a room? Well, I mean, my own kids share a room on purpose. We actually have an extra room, but I like the relationship that develops around the time they go to bed, and they chat about things, and they have this whole day. It's really cute. They have this little thing where, and I've only noticed it kind of recently, when they're done talking, they say, buenas noches. And the other one says, buenas noches. And it's like their symbol to each other that that's it, that their talking is done. Now they're going to sleep. And I'm not part of that. Like there's these things that they do that have nothing to do with me, and it's just their sweet little communication. So I really personally love that they share a room. And but if parents are, you know, if the baby's really little, I usually recommend that the baby has their own space to sleep in while they're learning to sleep through the night, because it's so activating to have somebody else to think about in your space. So if it's, you know, parents sharing a room with the baby and we do something creative, like I was saying, that parents come up with a way to physically distinguish the space, or temporarily, if the baby's learning to sleep independently, that somebody moves out of their room. You know, it could be the parents. I actually have a lot of parents blow up an air mattress or sleep on the couch, like a pull-out couch in the living room for a bit while the baby's learning to sleep independently. Or, you know, sometimes we have the toddler or the preschool age kid move out of the room, because it helps the baby enormously. Even rooms that have, or homes that have like a large walk-in closet, anything that allows the baby to not have to think about who's right there, because it's so interesting and activating to them at night. It can really, really help them learn quickly the pattern of independent sleep. And then when you put them back together, it's a little more seamless. That said, in the long run, everybody learns to sleep through everybody's noises for the most part. So I don't like parents to have to feel like they are tiptoeing around, or they're, kids learn to sleep through each other's grumbling and, sounds in the middle of the night. So it all works out in the end.
Do you typically?
Yeah, just to add to that, I do sometimes like the white noise, because while I agree we get used to sounds. Like if you live in a big city, you get used to those sounds. If you're in a quiet country, you get used to those sounds. But the white noise, we know scientifically, even helps adults to sleep better. And so that having that too, I think does maybe muffle a little bit and make it a little bit more consistent in the sleep environment. So it's great if baby's alone, but also if they're sharing a room with a sibling.
So as we get ready, to close up, is there a takeaway that you'd love for moms and dads that are working through sleep with their children?
I think what I can say is feel confident, even as nervous as you are as a new mom or dad. Just feel confident that that instinct really does kick in, and you really get to know this little person very early on, and just go with your gut, whether it's feeding choices, sleeping choices, getting your baby to sleep, and certainly beyond. I think it's important to trust yourself. And again, the biggest things for me were aligning with your partner, and that goes on, I'm telling you, 2 teenagers at home now, that goes on for the rest of their lives. It seems really intense at the beginning because you're both going through this new experience of parenthood, but yes, being aligned. And when you're starting to do things like choices for foods or discipline or sleep or anything like that in parenting, the more consistent you can be, the quicker you'll get to your end result.
I think I would echo so many of those thoughts. Is like, I think for new parents right now, especially with so much social media and information on the internet, it's like, I think about the way that parents have to source and sift through so many different points of view. And Facebook, they're like getting a lot of information from other people, they're getting a lot of their information from their peers, and then from like taking this piece from this person and that from that person. But wait, this person said that. The choices feel endless, and I think it's confusing. And I hear a lot of parents coming to us and saying, well, I heard from this thing was this, but then what about that? And I'm like, oh my God, you poor parents. Like it must be so hard to not know. I think it's really important to feel like Jacqueline was saying, you trust your gut. You've decided what feels right to you. You have your experts that you trust. Now you're going to go with your gut, and you're going to like follow something that sounds right to you, a book, a person, an expert. Like find that person and work with them, and also just work together, and don't feel like you have to find every piece of information down a rabbit hole. I just hear so much anxiety from parents around that. And then also I would just say that you really want to believe in your child's ability to sleep. It's like the number one thing that we always tell parents after a certain age. They want to sleep. They're able to sleep. And you really, if you have the confidence about that, then it'll help you weather the transition, because it can be a little bumpy. But on the other side is usually like just such a beautiful chapter of sleeping well. And everybody's mostly people say they're surprised at how capable their babies are.
Okay, well, it's hard to follow those two. I mean, you basically both said so many beautiful things that I totally agree with. Just to add to it, one thing we didn't touch upon here that I always bring up, because I don't think people connect, is feeding and sleeping, and how much they kind of work together, and people kind of put them in their own separate compartments. So talking about how they affect each other, I think, is important. And then also just like being on the same page as your partner, consistency, and as Heather was saying, taking in all the new information and then filtering it through your own sense of reason, what makes sense to you, And then I always just say, you know, you're never stuck. Like people get nervous, like, well, I can't change this because this is how I've been doing it, you know, and this is what's working. And it's working, but it's not working because that's why they're coming to you. So trying to give parents that confidence is that, you know, babies, you know, you can change things. It takes babies a little bit of time to adjust to a new change, but they do. And if developmentally they're ready, they will adjust. And to just kind of breathe and pause and be patient and, you know, allow them, you know, sometimes it's just so hard to tolerate a baby being frustrated even for a minute. So, you know, talking about like you're still there, you're still with them, but sometimes it's okay to breathe and just tolerate with them that transition.
Well, great. I just can't thank you enough for your time. It was all incredibly informative and we're so grateful. So thank you again so much.